Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about PlayStation 1 emulation with Duckstation, and Duckstation just got a brand new update. So this latest update has a whole bunch of bug fixes, optimizations, and even brand new features. For example, they fixed the GPU usage when you're not using VSync. They've backported buggy NVIDIA driver workarounds from PCSX2, the PS2 emulator, and they've added a compatibility report in the game's summary. Now, as far as I know, this update is for PC only. I mean, if I head to Google Play, the last update for the Android version here was January 27th. And if I head to their website, the last update here was January 22nd. Duckstation is 100% free, it's open source, and it gets updated quite frequently. I'll drop a link to the GitHub in the description below. Next up, we're talking about the Raspberry Pi. And if you've got a Raspberry Pi and you've got it connected to the internet, you might like this news. So Raspberry Pi has officially announced Raspberry Pi Connect, a secure and easy to use way to access your Raspberry Pi remotely from anywhere on the planet, just using a web browser. However, unfortunately, Raspberry Pi Connect does not work on every single version of the Pi. It does work on the Raspberry Pi 5, Raspberry Pi 4, or Pi 400, and you need to be running Raspberry Pi OS Bookworm using Wayland. Now, it seems simple enough to set up, and they say in the future it will support SSH. And speaking about remote, if you've got a Steam Deck, you might be excited about this update. SteamOS 3.6.0 preview just dropped. I would argue this update is actually pretty big. I mean, they've updated Linux kernel to version 6.5. They've updated Mesa to 24.1 with many performance and correctness improvements. They've also here updated to a more recent Arch Linux base. They've improved pairing experience with Apple AirPods. They've improved session recovery speed after the GPU crashes. And they've also improved the speed of subsequent OS updates. They've improved reliability of certain microSD card usage scenarios. On top of that, they've improved the connection speed of some Bluetooth devices. They've updated to KDE Plasma version 5.27.10. They've enabled thumbnail previews for videos in the file browser. For the Deck dock, there's actually some big stuff here too. They've added support for some HDMI CEC features, like TV remote input, TV wake up, and TV input switching. And they've updated the dock firmware with compatibility fixes for high refresh rate VRR displays. And for the BIOS here, they've added overclocking controls on the Steam Deck LCD. Next up, we're talking about a couple of updates to some interesting ROM hacks. They're both of Streets of Rage 2. The one is an update to X-Men Streets of Rage 2. And they say it now includes a playable Storm, one new boss, new replacement in-game artwork, and some revisions to the existing X-Men sprites for a more stable two-player mode. The other update is to the TMNT Streets of Rage 2 ROM hack, and it adds 2 new bosses and a few sprite updates. So the first ROM hack is called X-Men of Rage. It's for the Sega Genesis, and in my opinion, the sprite work here looks pretty darn good. And the second one is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Gaiden. And I would argue the sprite work on this ROM hack is also looking pretty good. And speaking about looking pretty good, next up we're talking about the Anbernic RG Cube. And Retro Handhelds has just showcased some brand new images of this upcoming handheld. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below. They say it's featuring a Unisoc T820. Not sure how much RAM it's going to have, but at the same time here, the overall form factor, aside from the D-pad, looks nice. Unfortunately, I don't have a release date or price just yet, but knowing Anbernic, it's probably going to come out fairly soon, and then they're going to have 1,000 other models that come out afterwards. Anyways, here, let me know your thoughts about the screen aspect ratio, the overall form factor, and whether or not you think the D-pad on this one is going to be good. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo, and if you've got a Nintendo Switch and you use Twitter on it, you might not be excited about this news. Nintendo announced that on June 10th of this year, they are discontinuing support for Twitter. And they also say here, while posting screenshots and videos to Facebook will continue to be available, this service may also be continued at a later date. The reason for the discontinuation of Twitter may be the same reason that PlayStation and Xbox discontinued support for it, and it may be the $42,000 per month API access cost. I mean, Nintendo may need that money to pay lawyers. Moving on, and we're talking about Capcom, and Capcom has posted that they've achieved record high net sales in 7th consecutive year of record high profits. Profits appear to be driven by Resident Evil 4, Street Fighter 6, Monster Hunter World, and also Dragon's Dogma 2. In a world where other game studios are closing down, Capcom appears to be going strong. Next up, we're talking about the Switch 2, or the Wii Switch Cube 64, or the Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or whatever they end up calling it. And the hardware specs for this system may have just leaked. I'll drop a link to this page in the description below. Now, there's a whole ton of interesting information on this page. Some of the most interesting information, in my opinion, is the RAM. So they say here it's going to have 12 gigs of RAM. It's DDR5 RAM. To be specific, they're saying it's comparable to LPDDR5X. So at a high level here, while the Steam Deck has 16 gigs of RAM and the new Switch reportedly only has 12, the Switch's RAM is going to be a lot faster. It may perform better. And on top of that, it appears this new Switch is going to have built-in 256 gigs of storage. Now, even more interesting here is the amount of speculation out there that this new Switch is going to be more powerful than the PS4 and also the Xbox Series S. I don't necessarily know if that's going to translate into real-world performance, but at the same time here, those may be lofty expectations. Either way here, having 12 gigs of LPDDR5 or even LPDDR5X is a heck of a lot more than the existing Switch at 4 gigs of LPDDR4. So I guess the big question here is, with these improved specs, is the Switch 2 going to be a lot more expensive? I don't have any information on the price. If I had to guess, I'd say it's in the $400 range, but I could be completely wrong. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. What do you think about the specs, and what do you think the price is going to be? And speaking about price increases, next up we're talking about the new ROG Ally X, or ROG Ally X. ASUS has teased this brand new handheld. They say it's going to have a bigger battery, the hardware is going to be tweaked, and it may end up costing more money. I'll drop a link to the full article in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. There's a very interesting quote here. We're not looking at 30 to 40% more capacity. We're looking at way more than that, and that's in regards to battery life. So I'm curious to see how this thing's actually going to perform. They're also looking at increasing the RAM. Now, from my understanding, the ROG Ally X is going to have the same AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme chip in it. So it's not necessarily a new generation, it's kind of a refresh of the existing one. And we will know more information on June 2nd. Next up, we're talking about Nostlan, a free and open source game launcher for emulators, and Nostlan just got a brand new update. So version 2.5 is the latest update. They say Ryujinx is now the default Switch emulator. If you already had Yuzu installed, it'll still work. And there's an update here to the Switch database to include Princess Peach Showtime. This one is available for PC. Next up, we're quickly talking about free and open source replacement for Wii U and 3DS servers with Pretendo. And Pretendo has just launched their forum. So Pretendo has a website, they have a Discord, and now they've got a forum. There's a lot of great information out there, and if you are curious and wanted to check out the forum, I'll drop a link in the description below. Next up, we're quickly talking about Super Tilt Bro, and this is a demake of Super Smash Bros., and it works on the NES. Interestingly here, they say it features online play thanks to a Wi-Fi chip in the cartridge. This one is up over on itch.io, and feel free to check it out. So while you can get this game over on itch.io, if you wanted the physical version of the game, you can pre-order it. It's around $55. And this was a successfully funded Kickstarter. Next up, this one is super weird. There's an Akuma mode. It's a mod for Resident Evil 2. Does it break the game? Maybe yes. Does it break the lore? Absolutely yes. Is it awesome? Also, arguably, absolutely yes. If you are curious about this one, it's over on ModDB. I'll drop a link to it in the description below in the event that you wanted to learn more about it. Next up, we're quickly talking about an indie game that just launched on Steam. It's called Animal Well. And this is a 2D Metroidvania platformer that may be a little bit different than you're used to. On Steam right now, this game has an overwhelmingly positive review score. The game size of this is tiny, it's about 34 megabytes. And it'll run on almost any machine out there. I mean, check out these specs, they're not very demanding. Windows 10, 1 GHz processor, 1 gig of RAM, and 40 megs of space. This is also Steam Deck verified. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.